a team of ocean explorers just discovered the resting place of 80 American sailors. This is the first time the USS Greyback has been seen in 75 years.
Navy cameras just opened a door to a nightmare from 1944. The lost submarine USS Greyback has been found, and what is inside is truly shocking. This boat was famous for its winning streak until it disappeared in the East China Sea. For decades, families had no answers.
There's a book I read and it said, these ships are known only to God. But now we know where the Greyback is.
Now, robotic eyes have explored the hull in the freezing dark. They found the deck gun ready to fire and the crew still at their stations. It is a scene frozen in time that no one was prepared to see. These sailors were fighting until the very last second of their lives. Legend of the Pacific. On February 27, 1944, the USS Greyback vanished. It was one of the best submarines in the Pacific Fleet. 1 minute it was there, and the next it was gone. There was no radio call for help. There were no survivors found. 80 crew members simply disappeared into the East China Sea. For 75 years, the Navy thought they knew exactly where the boat went down. They had records from the Japanese military. They had numbers and maps. Many groups spent millions of dollars using sonar to look for the wreck. They found nothing but empty sand and dark water. To say this boat was a legend is not even the half of it. It had sent over 63,000 tons of enemy shipping to the bottom. In less than 2 years, it took out 14 big vessels. Other crews talked about the Greyback like it was a team that could not lose. The man in charge was Commander John Moore. He was 39 years old and had spent his whole life in submarines. He knew how to wait for days to find a target. He knew how to fire and dive before anyone could catch them. His crew trusted him with their lives. When you are stuck in a steel tube 200 feet under the water, that trust is everything. The 80 men on board were some of the best the Navy had. Some had been through many battles. Others were new but very well trained. They knew that one mistake could mean staying on the ocean floor forever. On January 28, 1944, they left Pearl Harbor for their 10th mission. They were heading for the most dangerous waters in the world. They had to keep the radio quiet. Families knew that no news was normal, but the Greyback never came home. By March 30th, the Navy told 80 families that their loved ones were lost. Submarines do not leave much behind when they sink. There is no wood to float and no bodies wash up on the beach. They just take everything into the dark. For 75 years, those families lived with a giant hole in their lives. They had no idea where their sons or fathers were resting. The Navy had closed the case, but the ocean kept the secret. It seemed like the Greyback was going to stay a ghost forever. But here's the part that trips everyone up. The maps everyone had been using for decades were wrong. They were off by just one tiny bit, but that bit changed everything. While everyone was looking over here, the submarine was actually over there. This small error meant that every search for 75 years was looking at an empty patch of mud. The crew on the surface had no idea they were about to find a tomb. Single mistake, hiding history. In 2018, a Japanese worker named Yutaka Iwasaki was looking at old war papers for fun. He liked to read the real handwriting from the war. He found the report about the attack on the Greyback. He looked at the numbers for the location and compared them to the American records. They did not match. The original report said the boat was at 128 degrees. The American paper said 127 degrees. That one tiny change meant the search area was off by 100 miles. For 75 years, everyone was looking in the wrong spot because of a typing error. This changed everything. It meant the Greyback was not where the Navy said it was. It was resting in a different part of the ocean entirely. Iwasaki told Tim Taylor about this. Taylor runs a group that looks for lost submarines. He knew the math was right. They finally had a real chance to find the boat. They took a big research ship called the Petrel out to the new spot in 2019. This ship was full of the best tools in the world. They used robotic drones that could swim by themselves. These drones used sound to paint a picture of the bottom. The water was 1,400 feet deep. This is the midnight zone where no light ever reaches. The water is almost freezing and the pressure is high enough to crush a person in a second. No person can dive that deep. Only robots can go there and come back. Days went by and the crew was getting tired. They scanned miles of mud. They found rocks that looked like ships and hills that looked like wrecks. But they did not find the Greyback. Wait, there is one big problem with searching the deep sea. The ocean floor is not flat. It has volcanoes and deep cracks. These things can hide a submarine easily. The crew started to worry that even with the right numbers, the boat was gone. Some sailors think that some ships do not want to be found, but the team on the Petrel did not give up. They kept sending the drones down. Then the sonar picked up something hard. It was the shape of a long hull. It was made of metal. They sent a camera down on a long wire so they could see in real time. Everyone gathered around the screens in the control room. They watched the mud go by. Then a giant shadow appeared. It was the tower of a submarine. The Greyback was sitting perfectly upright on the bottom. After 75 years, they finally found her. But the joy of finding the boat did not last very long. Robotic eyes in darkness. As the camera got closer, the room got very quiet. The first thing they saw was the deck gun. It was a 4-inch cannon. Usually, when a submarine is about to dive, the gun is tucked away. But this gun was pointing at the sky. It was ready to fight. This means the captain did not try to hide. He chose to stay on the surface and shoot back at the plane. It was a brave choice, but it was also a very dangerous one. The camera moved up to the tower. There was a huge hole in the back of it. The metal was ripped and bent inward. This was where the 500-pound bomb hit. It would have been a terrible explosion. The men standing on the bridge would have had no chance. But there was a detail that was even more shocking. The hatch on top was wide open. It was not blown off. It was just open. This means men were trying to get inside when the bomb went off. Or maybe they were trying to get out. Either way, an open hatch is the worst thing that can happen to a diving submarine. It means the ocean can pour inside like a waterfall. The camera showed that the fins used for diving were set to go down. The engines were running. The Greyback was trying to hide under the water while it was being attacked. Because the hatch was open, the water would have filled the control room instantly. The men inside would have known exactly what was happening as they started to fall. They did not just sink slowly, they plummeted 1,400 feet into the dark. Let's switch gears for a second and think about what that was like for the 80 men inside. The boat would have been shaking. The lights would have gone out. The sound of the water coming in would have been louder than anything else. But the cameras showed that something strange happened. The boat hit the bottom and stayed upright. It did not tip over. It sat there like it was still on a mission. The deep water is very cold and has very little air. This means things do not rot like they do on the surface. There are no big fish to eat anything. The inside of the boat became a time capsule. When the camera looked through the holes in the side, the people watching on the ship could not believe their eyes. It was not a mess of junk inside. What they saw next made some of the searchers turn away from the screen. Frozen moments of valor. The crew of the Greyback was still at their stations. In the engine room, the men were near the engines. In the room where the torpedoes are kept, the men were right by the tubes. In the control room, they were at the wheels and buttons used to steer. They did not run away. They did not scramble for the exits. They stayed exactly where they were supposed to be. 75 years later, they were still doing their jobs. This is the part that nobody talks about when they mention war. Most people think everyone runs when things get scary. But these sailors stayed calm. They knew that the only way to save the boat was to keep working until the end. Even when the water was rising, they did not leave their posts. The cameras saw personal things too. There were boots and belts. There were tools still hanging on the walls. One man had his headphones on near the sonar station. He was listening for the enemy until the very last second. The cold water had kept everything looking almost new. It was like a movie, but it was 100% real. The search team decided they would not go inside. They did not want to disturb the men who were resting there. It is a war grave now. They filmed what they could from the outside, and then they stopped. They had seen enough to know the truth. The stories about the boat being lost to a secret weapon or a mistake by their own side were not true. It was just a brave crew that met a terrible end in a fair fight. Fast forward a little bit to the ceremony they held on the ship. They read all 80 names out loud. They rang a bell for every man. They threw a wreath into the water. It was the first time in 75 years that these men were honored at their real resting place. For the families, this was the end of a very long wait. They finally knew where their fathers and grandfathers were. They were not lost anymore. They were at the bottom of the East China Sea, still guarding their boat. The Navy says these men are on eternal patrol. That means they never stop their mission. After seeing the pictures, that feels very true. They are still there 1,400 feet down in the silent dark, but many people wonder if we should leave them there forever. Final rest at bottom. The discovery of the Greyback changed the lives of many people, but there are still 41 other American submarines missing from the war. Their families are still waiting for news. If one tiny number could hide a boat for 75 years, how many others are still waiting to be found? There are millions of pages of old papers in offices all over the world. Some are in Japan and some are in America. Many have never been read properly. Each one could be the key to finding another lost crew. The war might be over for us, but for the families of the missing, it is still happening. They still have questions that have no answers. Plain and simple, the ocean is a very big place. It can hide anything, but human error is often what keeps things hidden. We have the technology to find every ship on the bottom. We have robots and sonar, but if we do not have the right numbers, we are just guessing. The Greyback shows us that we need to look closer at the things we think are facts. Most folks have no idea that history can be changed by one digit on a map. It makes you think about what else we have wrong. Is there another boat just a few miles away from where we are looking? The search for the other 41 boats is still going on today. If you take away all the noise, this story is about more than just metal and water. It is about the men who did not give up. It is about the families who never forgot them. The Greyback is now an artificial reef. Small fish swim through the rooms where sailors once lived. Sea plants grow on the cannon that was ready to fire. The ocean has taken the boat and made it part of the sea floor. The 80 men inside are at peace now. They are no longer a mystery. They are heroes who were found. But the question remains for the rest of the missing. Will we ever find all of them, or is the ocean too good at keeping secrets? The discovery of the USS Greyback brings closure, but should we bring the crew home or leave them at peace? What do you think? Tell us below. Please like and subscribe for more.